Something happened at this World Cup that nobody planned for. When FIFA announced the 2026 tournament would be played across 11 American cities, from Los Angeles to Boston, Dallas to Seattle, the conversation was about logistics, ticket prices, the heat in Houston, and the distance between venues, about whether soccer belonged in a country that still calls it soccer. Nobody predicted that the most viral content from the entire tournament would have nothing to do with the games. It would be a German man, named Freddy, standing in a Buc-ee's parking lot at 11 o'clock at night, completely speechless. Freddy is at Freddy LA7 on X. Music, he flew into Atlanta with a handwritten route map, a budget airline ticket, and what he described as an up-for-anything attitude. His plan was to follow Germany's World Cup campaign across the South for 6 music weeks. What he didn't plan for was quickly becoming one of the most music-beloved accounts on the internet. He landed in Atlanta, got on the MARTA, the city's public transit system, and immediately learned what every Atlanta local already knows. That was a mistake. Music, but Freddy wasn't complaining. Freddy never complains. He got off, found his way to a Waffle House, sat down at 1 o'clock in the morning, and posted about it like he'd just arrived at a Michelin-starred restaurant. Then he drove to Gainesville, then tubed down the Chattahoochee River in Tennessee, then arrived at Jordan-Hare Stadium in Auburn, Alabama for an Argentina-Iceland friendly, the pregame to his pregame, and posted, "This is the craziest stadium I've ever been to, and I've been to a lot of ones." That post got 4 million views. Auburn, not the World Cup, Auburn University in Alabama. By the time Freddy posted about Buc-ees, he'd passed 320,000 followers, and the number was still climbing. His review, he stood in the parking lot, walked inside, and couldn't form a sentence. The camera just panned slowly across the beef jerky wall. Thousands of Americans who'd never thought twice about a gas station were watching a German man discover what they'd always known deep down. It's genuinely one of the strangest and most spectacular things on Earth. A gas station mixed with Disney World wrapped in a gift shop. That's a quote, by the way, but it wasn't Freddy. That was a Scottish fan having the exact same experience 2 states north, and J.J. Watt, the former NFL defensive end, reached out publicly on X to offer to personally guide Freddy through Houston. The man has 3 Super Bowls worth of connections in Texas. He chose to spend his week showing a German soccer fan the best barbecue joints in town. And honestly, that's the right call. While Freddy was working his way north through Georgia and Tennessee, the Tartan Army arrived in Boston. Scotland had qualified for their first World Cup since 1998, and they came to New England loud and proud. At 6:30 in the morning on June 11th, a Boston area resident named Mike Morrison heard something outside his window. It was a man in a kilt standing on the front lawn of the Airbnb across the street, playing bagpipes. His friends were filming it. The saltire, the Scottish flag, was already hung in the windows. They'd apparently checked in overnight and decided the appropriate way to announce their arrival to the neighborhood was a traditional Scottish instrument before sunrise. Morrison filmed it, posted it on X with the caption, "In the dead of night, the Scots arrived at the Airbnb across the street, decked out and playing the pipes at 6:30 a.m. So, it begins." 9 million views. Morrison's post could have turned into a noise complaint. Instead, it became something else entirely. He went over and introduced himself. The Scots invited him to the game. He went. Scotland versus Haiti at Gillette Stadium, and this American who'd never met these people 48 hours earlier was in the stands with them, in a section full of kilts, watching the Tartan Army do what the Tartan Army does. They weren't a nuisance, Morrison clarified later. The piping may have lasted like a minute total. And then there was the Boston cop. A sergeant named Connor Hardy was working the fan fest at City Hall Plaza when some fans pulled out a soccer ball. Hardy, a 14-year police veteran in full uniform, bulletproof vest, belt with a gun and taser, started doing keepie-uppies. Not 1 or 2, a full display. The Scottish fans lost their minds. The video went everywhere. When I went over there, I think they originally thought I was going to steal the ball and be the fun police, Hardy told the Boston Globe. I actually just kind of did my thing with them, and it was fun. That sentence right there, that's the whole video. There's a pattern underneath all of these moments, and it's worth naming. One X user put it perfectly. One music thing I love about the European World Cup tourists right now is that they're not just being dropped off in the middle of Los Angeles or New York City or some overhyped metropolitan hub. They're going to Waffle House at 1 a.m. They're in Alabama. They're in Tennessee. They're standing inside a Buc-ees in the middle of the night having a spiritual experience. Oxford Economics projected that 1.24 million international visitors would come to the United States for this tournament. That's not a small number. But the people creating the viral moments aren't the ones hitting Manhattan rooftop bars or Venice Beach. They're the ones who took a connecting flight to Atlanta, rented a car, and just started driving. What they found surprised them. Free refills, a concept so foreign to Europeans that music, an Italian fan's video of receiving his first unlimited soda refill, has been viewed millions of times. Not a goal, not a save, just a man getting his Coke refilled without being charged extra. People from countries where that simply doesn't happen watched it and couldn't believe it was real. Southern hospitality. Freddy posted about a hotel receptionist in Alabama who did something for him, something Morrison's piece described only as just what the South does, without elaborating on the specific detail, which somehow makes it even better. The post about that moment, an ordinary person treating a stranger well without thinking twice, racked up more engagement than most of his soccer content. The food, Nashville hot chicken, goo-goo clusters, Kansas City barbecue. A Japanese sports reporter who crossed the Pacific to cover the World Cup ate a basket of wings somewhere in the South and documented the experience with the reverence usually reserved for great events. And then there was the sheer scale of everything. These are fans who come from countries where you can drive 3 hours and land in a completely different nation, with a different language and currency. They arrive in Georgia, drive 7 hours, and they're still in Georgia. That one detail, the size of a single American state compared to entire European countries, keeps coming up in their posts as a source of genuine, repeated amazement. Here's the thing: this tournament has music, quietly revealed that nobody in the pre-tournament discourse was saying. There was a real conversation for months leading into this World Cup about whether America was the right host, whether the politics were right, whether the immigration situation would affect attendance, whether the culture was ready. European soccer federations had threatened boycotts. Opinion columnists wrote pieces arguing the US had already lost the tournament before a ball was kicked, all because of vibes. And then Freddy showed up at Buc-ees, and a cop in Boston started doing keepie-uppies in a bulletproof vest. And a man in a kilt played bagpipes at 6:30 in the morning, and 9 million people watched it, and almost every single one of them smiled. The question of whether America deserved to host this tournament got answered somehow by a gas station in Texas, a Waffle House in Georgia, and a neighborhood in Massachusetts that woke up to bagpipes and thought, you know what? That's fine. That's great, actually. Come in. Let me show you around. The World Cup was supposed to be about what happens on the pitch, and the games have been incredible. You already know that from everything happening in Los Angeles and Seattle and Houston. But out in the margins, something else happened. A few hundred Europeans discovered the parts of America that Americans sometimes forget to love, and they filmed all of it, and the rest of the world watched. That wasn't in anyone's marketing plan. It just happened. Freddy's still on the road, by the way. J.J. Watt got him into Houston. He's still got weeks left before the tournament ends. He's still posting. He has never once complained. And somewhere in Alabama, a hotel receptionist who did something quietly kind for a German stranger has no idea that millions of people are talking about it. That's what the World Cup brought to America this summer. Not just the games, a show of humanity.